Hey there everyone, I'm Don, Professor Goway, and welcome to the Goway Pro Travel Tale podcast. Hear from expert guests including conservationists, explorers, tourism professionals and everyday globetrotters to discover fascinating stories in the world of travel and be inspired to travel far and travel often. Listen and subscribe to Goway Pro Travel Tales on your podcast app of choice or check out episodes on the Goway Pro YouTube channel for video podcasts, plus other exciting content from the world of travel with Goway. Inspire, motivate, and educate. Write your own travel tale. Goway Pro Travel Tale Podcast. Now today I'd like to welcome... Normally I'd be interviewing someone else about a really cool subject, but today I thought I'd look in the mirror and I'd recount some memories of my time as a tour guide on the road, and in particular my memories and experiences with respect to Machu Picchu, and cover all aspects of rail or trail to Machu Picchu. The memories are clear, which is saying something, as these days I can barely remember yesterday. I'll say that this is a testament to the impact of a visit to Machu Picchu can have on the individual, be it a one and only visit or, as for me, multiple visits. Now the trail allows many opportunities to be with your own thoughts, and there is one strong memory from when I was walking the Inca Trail back in the day, when I was younger and a fitter tour guide. Remembering a specific day so long ago and a promise I made to myself in amongst the many trails walked is not only really strange, but really when you look at the stage of my life when I had this thought, it was, let's say, an interesting time to be thinking this way. I was walking, actually trekking, the famed Inca Trail en route to Machu Picchu for probably the 10th or maybe the 11th time. Now the reason I was at that number was, at the time, I was an overland guide for a company called Dragoman. Dragoman is an African word for guide, and this company ran overland trips. Now an overland trip is traveling, well, overland, shock horror, in a custom-built 22-ton truck and mainly camping. And this style can happen anywhere and all over the world. From London to Cape Town, London to Kathmandu, Anchorage to Ushuaia, and everywhere in between. The trip could last anywhere from 10 days to 6 months, and you would be with a group of fellow travelers from that 10 days up to those 6 months. It all depended on how roughy-tufty you, the adventure seeker, wanted to be. My job, and easily the best job I have ever had, was leading and looking after these people and taking them all around the world, and in this case, all around South and Central America. And now, Goway can actually book this type of travel as well if you are of the adventurous type. Just let us know. One of, if not the most popular trips to South America was the trip called the Inca Heartland, and that was 5 weeks from Quito in Ecuador to La Paz in Bolivia, or of course, vice versa. Back in the day, favorite phrase of mine, and further back in the day and to this day, a visit to Machu Picchu, perched high above the Urubamba River, which is a tributary of the Amazon River, was and is the cornerstone to anyone's trip to Peru. Now, I spent about 4 years in and around South and Central America as a guide, and much of that time was spent in and around Peru on the Inca Heartland, and by extension, in and around Cusco, and by further extension, in and around the Sacred Valley and of course Machu Picchu. I was lucky enough to have walked the trail, the 2-day, 4-day and 5-day option, over 30 times, and to have visited the ruins probably, I'm guesstimating, over 50 times. When not walking the trail, I was riding the rails on one of the many train options that connects the Sacred Valley to Machu Picchu. But back to that memory and the promise I mentioned. So moved, impressed, and in awe of Peru and the Andes and the trail, that on day 2 of the Inca Trail is when and where I had the thought of, one day, I will bring my family on this trek. I want to show and enjoy this experience with my kids someday. Now mind you, this thought was not always at the forefront of my mind after that, but the seed had been planted. Now, fast forward many, many years later, my love for Latin America remained and remains to this day, and I found myself opening up Latin America here at Goway Travel. In turn, my visits to the region and Peru continued both for pleasure and for business. And of course, visits to Machu Picchu continued, as I never grew tired of the sight, and I still haven't after all this time. That promise I had made to myself all those years ago, as I was climbing to Dead Woman's Pass on the trail, came into focus as I now had a family, a real family, not just an imaginary one. I am blessed to have one beautiful wife, whom I actually met when I was a guide. Yes, she was a passenger on one of my trips, and who not surprisingly loved travel as much as I did and do. In time, we had 3 kids, all boys, affectionately known as Thing 1, Thing 2, and Thing 3, and a dog named Quito. Yep, Quito as in Quito, Ecuador. I'll let you sleuth out there, try and work out why we named our dog Quito. The clues to the answer are all here. But I do digress. In time, the stars aligned and a trip to Peru, my old stomping ground, with family was a feasible proposition. Apart from all the cool things we set up for other parts of Peru, things like dune buggying in the Peruvian desert, cooking lessons, local village visits, etc., I had to decide whether it would be rail or trail to Machu Picchu, as walking the full trail is not only a time commitment, 5 days, but a true physical undertaking. The kids were of an age, 7, 10 and 12, and the youngest is an asthma sufferer. So we need to be realistic in expectations of taking kids on a 42-kilometre, 26-mile hike in the Andes. If they were not happy, we would not be happy, and you don't want unhappy kids on a holiday. Now, to be honest, it was a quick and easy decision. I had youthful memories of multiple treks. My wife had walked the Inca Trail herself, plus she has climbed mountains in the Himalayas, and she has summited Kilimanjaro. And the kids, well, they were kids. They all played hockey and sport. We go backcountry camping, and they were fit enough. So, easy decision, trail it was. Now that worked for us, but would it work for you? While Machu Picchu is one of the world's most famous archaeological sites, the journey to the ruins and the many options to get there can sometimes be confusing. Located in a valley, Cusco, the ancient capital of the Incan Empire, is approximately 112 kilometers, about 70 miles from Machu Picchu itself. To reach the ruins, you travel by road from Cusco to a town called Ollantaytambo. Not only is the town the trailhead for the classic Inca Trail, it is a living Incan town itself and should be part of any visit to Machu Picchu, be it rail or trail. If you're taking the train to Machu Picchu, you would take the road transfer into Ollantaytambo. But here, instead of starting the trail in Ollantaytambo, you would board the train that takes you on to Machu Picchu. You cannot reach Machu Picchu by road alone, so it is rail or trail. They are the 2 choices. Between Cusco and Machu Picchu, however, is an area known as the Sacred Valley. Now, within this region, there are many famous towns and ruins, and it should not be missed. While you could take the train all the way from Cusco to Ollantaytambo and onwards to Machu Picchu, we recommend the road transfer from Cusco to Ollantaytambo so you can visit all these amazing sites and ruins in the Sacred Valley. Some of the better known sites and activities are Chincheros, Pisac markets and Pisac ruins, Ollantaytambo itself, Moroi and Maras, and the chance to visit a local village, and also, if you want to be adventurous, mountain biking. Now that's just to name a few options. There are many more. The time spent visiting in and around the Sacred Valley also assists in acclimatizing to altitude in and around Machu Picchu, whether you're doing it by rail or trail. So it's another good reason to visit the Sacred Valley. For all trips to Machu Picchu, we suggest you add a Cusco city tour combined with the Sacred Valley, not only for acclimatization purposes, but of course to see the stunning history of the valley and the region, all of which will help in gaining a better understanding of Machu Picchu itself. So let's go through the different considerations of rail or trail to Machu Picchu. Let's start with the trail, and we will focus on the 5-day trail as it is the most popular and the most beneficial. There is good news and there is not so good news. Now the good news, a very important but overlooked fact is that Machu Picchu is actually lower in altitude than Cusco. Cusco is roughly 3,200 meters or 10,500 feet, and Machu Picchu is at about 2,100 meters or 7,900 feet. So you actually drop in altitude. The not so good news, the highest point of the trail is 4,200 meters or about 13,800 feet at Dead Woman's Pass. So as not to instill fear into our listeners, the pass gets its name from the silhouette of a woman lying down that is formed by the surrounding mountain peaks at the pass. This silhouette is visible from certain angles and has become a symbol of the pass, adding to its mystique and allure. Why she had to be dead? Yeah, I don't know. But hey, that's what it's called, Dead Woman's Pass, highest point on the trail on day 2. More good news? You're only at that height for no more than about 20 meters or about 60 feet before you head back down into the valley. So acclimatization is key to walking the trail, but no matter how well you prepare or how much time you spend at altitude prior, you still may suffer from altitude sickness, and if you do, it will most likely be on day 2 of the trail when you are heading up to Dead Woman's Pass. Now, the best way to acclimatize is to spend some time in and around Cusco, as mentioned, and the Sacred Valley. Ideally, 2 full days in Cusco and 2 to 3 days exploring in and around the Sacred Valley. This then gives your body and your mind, as it is often as much attitude as it is altitude, to see your body adapt to the higher altitudes. Altitude aside, there is a physical aspect to the trail. So let's talk through that, and again, this is the 5-day version. These references are also relative to walking in the Andes and a mountain range. Day 1. Day 1 is the easiest. You would have taken a road transfer from Ollantaytambo to the start point of the trail, about 20-minute drive down the valley from Ollantaytambo. You then complete entry formalities. On that point, you must have your passport or a copy of your passport that you use to book the trail with Goway on hand, otherwise you will not be allowed to walk the trail. You then walk alongside the river for most of the day with only very slight inclines, remember, relative to being in the mountains. You then take a left and head up into the valley, gaining a little bit of altitude where you'll camp for the first night. Day 2. Day 2 is seen as the hardest. This is the day you hit 4,200 meters or 13,800 feet at Dead Woman's Pass. In the language of the Incas, Quechua, it is called Wameg Wanyuska. Today is almost 95% uphill. Lunch is had at one of the few flat spots with views back into the valley from whence you have come, and the elusive Dead Woman's Pass is high above you. To quote a Kilimanjaro saying by the porters there, "Poli, poli, poli," just go nice and slow, and it won't be too much of a heartache to get to Dead Woman's Pass. Now, after summiting Dead Woman's Pass, you head back down almost immediately into the valley. Now, to me, this is the hardest part of day 2. It's not the climb up, it's the downhill, and it is somewhat steep, and that's pretty tough on the knees. You then camp in the valley on day 2. Day 3, this is the longest. On day 3, you hit the 2nd and 3rd passes, which are at a lower altitude than Dead Woman's Pass. Basically, once you cross Dead Woman's Pass, you are slowly now heading down in altitude. This is also where you start walking on the Royal Inca Road. That's true, authentic Incan roads. The 2nd pass is, however, a short, sharp challenge up first thing in the morning of day 3. But then it's a relatively smooth, flowing up and down along the ridgeline. Now remember that word, relative, until you have lunch at the 3rd pass, and then it's down, 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 and more down to the last campsite. While day 2 is tough with the up, up, up to Dead Woman's Pass, it is more of a mental challenge with seeing the destination way off in the distance and possibly battling some altitude issues. Day 3, however, is more physically demanding in my view due to the down, 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 down at the end. That is the pressure on the knees and thighs. But just keep in mind, you're going lower and lower in altitude. At the end of day 3, you camp near some amazing ruins called Winyawanya, which, if your energy levels are up to it, you should most definitely wander over to and have a look at, and your guide, who is accompanying you the whole time, will be more than happy to take you and chat through them. It is through Winyawanya that the 2-day trail walkers come through en route to Machu Picchu. More on that shortly. Day 4 is the shortest. From Camp 3 to the famed Sun Gate is anywhere from a 40-minute to 1 hour easy walking. And there you are, looking down on Machu Picchu. Here is an expert inside scoop. The only way to get the classic view of Machu Picchu is from the Sun Gate. The only way to get to the Sun Gate is to walk the trail or enter Machu Picchu, then walk through the ruins and up to the Sun Gate. It's only by walking the trail that you get that virgin view of the ruins, that wow moment, the first time you see Machu Picchu. The 2 options that give you that virgin view are the 5-day and the 2-day, or the 4-day trail, 5, 4, and 2-day trail, not the rail option. But a word of warning. In all the times I've walked the trail, only once did I get to the Sun Gate and see Machu Picchu without any cloud cover, and that was actually disappointing. Usually you arrive at the Sun Gate at sunrise and the ruins are shrouded in mist and cloud. So why would the ruins be covered in cloud most of the time, first thing in the morning? As the goal is to arrive at the sun gate for sunrise, and as you are in the mountains, you get early morning mountain weather, which regardless of what time of the year you are there, is usually mist and cloud. I always found it mildly amusing arriving with a group at the sun gate to hear the disappointment of not seeing the famed, dreamed of Machu Picchu in all her glory. These Globetrotters had dreamt of this sight, this moment, this feeling for months, years, or even decades, and they just spent 4 days challenging themselves mentally and physically, some digging very deep to get there. In fact, I had one woman from New York who on day 2, the day you hit Dead Woman's Pass, became completely delirious from altitude sickness. She had no idea where she was, and I walked with her, got her to the top of Dead Woman's Pass, grabbed a camera from her bag and took a picture of her at the Dead Woman's Pass sign at the top, then shepherded her down into the valley. Within 15 minutes of getting to a lower altitude, she came out of the stupor and away she went unaided. However, she didn't remember anything of the climb up. Luckily, she has the photo to see that she did it. Some people do dig deep to get there, as I just mentioned, but here they are standing at the literal precipice of a lifelong dream and they're disappointed, believe it or not. Disappointed in they've come all this way and they can't see it. I've always quietly laughed to myself, but then the reward for me as their guide and for them is presented. Mother Nature puts on a show, and as the sun comes up, the heat slowly burns off the mist while the winds move the clouds away, and tiny glimpses of the ruins are seen. You hear the ahs, ooh, as the picture of Machu Picchu is revealed as if a curtain is drawn back, and every time it teases just that little bit more until it is completely unveiled. For people who have finally arrived, the reward can be simply the marking of that tick on the list of places to go and to be seen. But for most, it is a mark on the soul, on the psyche, on the emotions. There is really nothing like it. After experiencing the unveiling of Machu Picchu from the sun gate, you then head down about 40 minutes and, as I term it, enter Machu Picchu from the back door. Due to regulations, you walk through the ruins, there's no real dawdling, to the main entrance where you gather and then re-enter for your official guided tour with your local guide who has been with you on the actual Inca Trail for the past 4 days. This tour of the ruins is about 4 hours. After that, early afternoon, day 4, you'll have a short period of free time, but in reality, the past 4 days have caught up with you, and most just want to head to their hotel in the valley below in Aguascalientes, which they do. There is a hotel right at the ruins entrance, the Belmont Sanctuary Lodge, but we recommend accommodation in Aguascalientes as it offers a broader choice of places to eat and of things to see and do. So that's end of day 4. After your visit to the ruins, you can then rest, eat, drink, chill in the hot springs in Aguascalientes, and or shop, or just sleep in a real bed before enjoying dinner. And if you really have any energy left, hit one of the local bars in the town. If on day 4, after your guided tour and a short walk around the ruins, you wanted to finish up and return to Cusco, you can do so by grabbing a late afternoon train back to Cusco. Doable, but we don't recommend it as it is rushed, and to be honest, after trekking for 4 days, you don't really get to appreciate or explore the ruins as they should be. As such, day 5. This is the day we recommend returning to Machu Picchu for that second visit at your own pace, in your own time, seeing what you want to see. Now that could be climbing Huayna Picchu, that's the famed peak that you see in photos of Machu Picchu, or climbing Machu Picchu Mountain, which sits behind the ruins, the other way. Both of these, however, need to be pre-booked when you book the Inca Trail. Walking back up to the Sun Gate is another option, or around the corner to the Inca Bridge, or simply just sitting and contemplating. It's your call, it's your time. It's worth pointing out entrances to Machu Picchu, be it you arrive by rail or trail, work in 2 sessions, a morning and an afternoon, and each session requires an individual paid-for entrance ticket. We could spend 30 minutes talking about the regulations to visit Machu Picchu, but that will be for another day, and all our destination specialists know all the ins and outs of that anyway. Some other things to be aware of trailing it to Machu Picchu. You will have a guide, as I mentioned, with you from the start of the trail from the finish on day 4. Day 5, the guide will not be there, but having entered Machu Picchu with your guide on day 4, you know how it works anyway, so you don't really need him or her with you. It's very easy to get back up there and spend that day 5 at your own leisure. On the trail, you will have a cook and porters, which means you carry nothing but a day pack during the day. All the tents are set up for you, they're taken down for you, and it's all done by the porter team. You just simply walk, eat, and enjoy. The food is amazing and plentiful, and they can cater for pretty much everything except kosher. And the only reason kosher is not normally catered for is that it would necessitate bringing a second set of cooking gear, and as someone's got to carry that, and weight is a premium, that makes it a bit of an issue. Though, it could be discussed if it is a deal breaker. There is a luxury Inca Trail option as well. It's the same trail, same height, same length, but the tents are a bit bigger and you get a camp cot bed for sleeping on. So that's something worth considering if you want a little bit of comfort on your Inca Trail walk adventure. Tipping is recommended at the end of the trip for the guides and or porters. Never ever have I had anyone not see tipping as warranted, but as always, tipping is a personal choice. Before we move on with the rail option, there is an alternative trek to Machu Picchu called the Salcantay trek. And there are 3 main differences here between the Salcantay and the classic Inca Trail. The Salcantay trek follows a much less traveled route, taking the trekker through more rural settings, but equally magnificent views of the Andes and retracing a multitude of traditional Inca trails. With the Salcantay, you don't walk into Machu Picchu through the Sun Gate as you do with the classic Inca Trail. You arrive further down the valley, past Machu Picchu. You then descend into the valley, take a train back up to the town of Aguascalientes, which is the town below the ruins, and then you enter the ruins by bus that run from Aguascalientes to the ruins on the final day of the trek. Now, the Salcantay is no less challenging than the classic version of the Inca Trail, but it offers a more remote and tranquil option in reaching Machu Picchu. It is also similar in length, roughly 40 kilometers or 23 miles. It is relatively, there's that word again, smoother up and down compared to the classic Inca Trail, which is more steep up and down. On the Salcantay trek, you can camp, but there is a lodge-to-lodge option. So each night you would be inside in a bed sipping red wine with access to showers, and in the high season, even massages are available. So it's a much more civilized option. But remember, this trek does not lead to the Sun Gate. You arrive, as mentioned, a little further down the valley where you do see Machu Picchu in the distance. So let's talk the rail part of Rail and Trail to Machu Picchu. Previously, a long time ago journeys to and from Machu Picchu by train started and finished in Cusco at the main rail terminal. This line from Cusco Central runs through literally the backyard of residents of suburban Cusco. And due to the frequency of the trains to and from Machu Picchu, changes were made to lessen the noise pollution and intrusion into the locals' daily lives. As such, the start-finish point for train journeys into Machu Picchu was moved to a town just outside of Cusco called Puroy. If choosing a train-only option with no touring in the Sacred Valley, you would be picked up from your hotel in Cusco very early in the morning and transferred by road approximately 30 to 40 minutes to the town of Puroy, just outside Cusco as mentioned. Your guide for the day would usually accompany you from Cusco, but may meet you at Aguascalientes, the town below Machu Picchu. From here, Puroy, you travel down through the Sacred Valley by train ending in the town of Aguascalientes. As an aside, this town is actually slowly being renamed Machu Picchu Pueblo, but this is the same thing as Aguascalientes, and as I've always known it as Aguascalientes, that is how we will keep referring to it in this little conversation. If you are doing, however, the recommended itinerary using rail only, that would mean a few days exploring the Sacred Valley first with your private guide and vehicle, or shed. Goway can do it all. On the day of your trip to Machu Picchu, you would be picked up early from your hotel in the Sacred Valley and transferred to Ollantaytambo, where you pick up your train into Aguascalientes and in turn Machu Picchu. So the options are you can start from Cusco and go all the way into Machu Picchu, or recommended you do some day touring in the Sacred Valley, 2 to 3 days. Then you pick up the train from Ollantaytambo, again the trailhead for the Inca Trail, and where most trains start and finish, and go from there into Aguascalientes and Machu Picchu. So with all this talk of rail and trail, just remember, there is no road into Machu Picchu, but there is a road from the town Aguascalientes up to the ruins themselves. Now you can walk from Aguascalientes up to the ruins or back down again, but we highly recommend the buses that connect the 2 points. That's the way to go. Aguascalientes is a major hub of activity with many choices of hotels from 3 to 5 star, restaurants, hot springs, nightclubs, and shopping. This is why I recommend, when we were talking the trail option, that most people head here on the afternoon of their arrival into Machu Picchu, because there's so much to see and do. And the same recommendation would be used for anyone on the rail option. Back to rail. After disembarking your train in Aguascalientes, whether you have taken the train from Cusco or Ollantaytambo, you take a short walk with your guide to where the buses run to and from Machu Picchu, as mentioned. If you are overnighting in Aguascalientes, your luggage will be taken to your chosen hotel. If you're staying at the Sanctuary Lodge, your luggage goes with you on the bus. The buses I just mentioned will take you to the ruins, and the ride takes about 20 minutes in either direction. On arrival at the ruins of Machu Picchu, it is a literal 1-minute walk to the main entrance, and the same to the Sanctuary Lodge Hotel. Where the main entrance is the famed Belmont Hotel Sanctuary Lodge. There is only one hotel option at the ruins for Machu Picchu, and it is literally a stone's throw from the main entrance. If this option is looked at, be it trail or rail, it is without doubt a beautiful hotel. But during the day, it's manically busy because everyone's going in and out of the entrance of Machu Picchu. So there's no sanctuary during the day. The word sanctuary comes into play when the ruins close at the end of the day. Then there is no one up there except guests of the hotel and the ruins themselves. That's where the name Sanctuary Lodge comes from. And that's when you really appreciate its location. Staying at the Sanctuary Lodge, however, will not get you into the ruins any earlier or allow you to stay any later. Generally speaking, we recommend accommodation again down in Aguascalientes because there is so much more to do and see. However, if people are looking for that quiet experience at night, Sanctuary Lodge is the way to go. Now, having arrived at Machu Picchu from Aguascalientes on your bus, you then enjoy your guided tour of Machu Picchu. The first visit to Machu Picchu, be it rail or trail, must be guided. With there being 2 separate entrance tickets for Machu Picchu, morning and afternoon, with each having a 4-hour window for a visit, first visit must be a guided visit. If a 1-day visit to Machu Picchu is preferred, you could opt for a very early departure from Cusco or the Sacred Valley to enjoy Machu Picchu both morning and afternoon in 1 day. After your morning guided visit, you must come out of the ruins before returning back in for your afternoon visit. Yep, lots of red tape, but it's to control the amount of people who visit the ruins and to try and keep it as safe and in as much of an undisturbed state as possible. Frustrating, but worth it. So you would enter the ruins in the morning on a guided tour, re-enter in the afternoon for time on your own. Or you can leave from Cusco a little bit later and take only an afternoon guided tour of Machu Picchu. At the end of the day's tour, you can literally walk to the Sanctuary Lodge, if that's your chosen hotel, or return back to Aguascalientes, Ollantaytambo, or Cusco. That's a 1-day easier option. If a 2-day visit is preferred, and this is our recommendation, we suggest a more leisurely departure from either Cusco or the Sacred Valley. Enjoy an afternoon guided tour of the ruins, overnight at either the Sanctuary Lodge or in a hotel of choice in Aguascalientes, and on the morning of day 2, return to Machu Picchu for personal time, be it climbing Huayna Picchu. Now this is somewhat easy but very steep climb, and it only has 2 departure times in the morning. When you do the climb, you sign in, and when you return, you have to sign out. Again, it's an easy climb, but it's very, very steep. So if anyone has height issues, this may be worth discussing with one of our destination experts. Or on day 2, you can climb Machu Picchu Mountain. Remember, both this and Huayna Picchu need to be pre-booked, or walk to the Sun Gate, or simply sit and chill and contemplate. Now the buses leave Aguascalientes from about 5:30 in the morning every morning, so you can easily get up to the main ruins for when the doors open at 8 o'clock. The buses don't run to a schedule, but leave when full. The time you depart on day 2, if we're talking rail, or day 5, if we're talking trail, for your second visit is entirely up to you. But again, we do recommend an early departure to allow time to either walk to the Sun Gate if you've not done it, or climb Machu Picchu or Machu Picchu Mountain, or walk to the Inca Bridge, or simply spend time walking around the ruins and sitting and contemplating. It's definitely worth one, if not all of the above. Well, you probably can't do all, 2 or 3 of the above. Rail or trail, day 2 or day 5 respectively, your train departure from Aguascalientes back to Cusco is early to late afternoon, so you need to be back down at Aguascalientes train station about 45 minutes before departure, excluding any shopping time in the Peruvian gift store, the local market, that is a labyrinth just outside the rail station. Trains back to Cusco depart anywhere from 1:30 to 9:30 p.m. Remember, the train journey back terminates in Poroy, the town just outside Cusco, but we recommend getting off in Ollantaytambo, where most people picked up the train to visit Machu Picchu. This is a faster trip taking a road transfer from here to Cusco than it is riding the rail all the way to Poroy, then road transfer from there to your hotel in Cusco. If you follow our expert recommendation of getting off in Ollantaytambo, you'll then arrive back somewhat early in Cusco for a nice meal, beer and or wine in celebration of witnessing one of the modern wonders of the world, Machu Picchu. They are the logistics of rail and trail, but what about the actual rail options? There is only one rail line to and from Cusco, Ollantaytambo and Machu Picchu, but on this track we have 2 to 3 types of trains. You have our recommended train, the Vista Dome, which is reserved seating, room for a small to medium-sized backpack, and snacks for sale. There are baggage limitations when visiting Machu Picchu. Your destination specialist can advise you on that. The Vista Dome train has glass ceilings so you can see the valley walls as you head down or out of the valley, as well as some onboard local entertainment. A second option, or the second most popular option, is the Hiram Bingham. This is a Belmont train. It's a classic colonial style train with reserved seating, more space, included meals, albeit basic, space for small or medium-sized day packs, a bar car and a viewing car. Here's another expert tip. As mentioned, both trains run the same tracks, but the Hiram Bingham is most definitely the more luxurious and in turn the more expensive option. But it does offer some better views due to the viewing car and luxury appointments. But most people will return from Machu Picchu in the mid to late afternoon. Daylight in the area ends around 6 p.m. on average, but it gets darker even quicker being in the valleys of the Andes. All this goes to say that you lose the viewing advantage and the light on the return trip. So our expert recommendation is take the Hiram Bingham down in full daylight and take the Vista Dome back. Now you may also hear of the local train. This was once the only train to and from Machu Picchu, but it was, and is now, the train that allowed locals to get up and down the valley, as there are locals that live beyond Machu Picchu further down the valley. This train became so overloaded with gringos that the locals couldn't use it anymore. I actually once rode from Aguascalientes back to Ollantaytambo on the local train, literally hanging off the outside of the train because of the crowds. So the local train is now that, just for locals, so it's not an option. Summing up rail options, you can visit Machu Picchu in a day, as we mentioned before, be it from the Sacred Valley or from Cusco. This is one we don't recommend, however. It's too rushed to see such an amazing sight. The perfect time, talking rail, is 2 days. You have the Vista Dome, the most popular, and the Hiram Bingham, luxury, and they can be booked in combination. There is also one hotel that has its own railhead in the Sacred Valley, so you can hop aboard directly from your hotel. That hotel is the Tambo del Inca, but again, same rail line. Now, summing up the trail options, you have the 4-day trek. This is where you visit Machu Picchu on the morning of day 4 and return to Cusco on that day, day 4. Not recommended because you've only seen the ruins for a short 4 hours on a guided tour just after walking 4 days, and you are just a little bit tired. By simply adding that extra day, you get to appreciate the ruins, unwind from the 4-day physical challenge, and then explore at your own leisure. An extra visit to Machu Picchu is day 5 of our 5-day trek option. You then have the 5 to 7 day Salkantay trek. Again, this can be lodge to lodge or it can be camping, but either way, you do not arrive into Machu Picchu via the Sun Gate. You arrive with views of Machu Picchu in the distance, and a reminder, you trek down to the valley floor, train back up to Aguascalientes, overnight there, and then you visit the ruins via the bus on the next day with all the hordes and the masses. 5-day classic is the way to go. If you want the best of both worlds and are short on time, then you can look at the Baby Inca Trail, the 2-day trail. For this, you take the train from Ollantaytambo down the valley, hop off at the hydroelectric dam, which is close to Machu Picchu. You then walk up from the valley floor, connecting with the standard classic 4 or 5-day trail at the 3rd night campsite, which is those set of ruins called Huayna Huayna. The Baby Inca Trails, the 2-dayers, do not stop or camp here. You walk through this campsite to the Sun Gate, arriving at the Sun Gate at lunchtime or early afternoon, so you miss the sunrise on the 2-day trail. The Baby Inca Trail is much shorter and it offers a physical challenge and a chance to enter the ruins of Machu Picchu through the famous Sun Gate, however, again, not at sunrise. It's only about a 15-kilometre, 9-mile trek in length, and it's relatively easy, offering great views of the valley and then Machu Picchu itself. Remember that word, relative. You would then overnight, be it at the Sanctuary Lodge or in Aguascalientes, and return on day 2 to do what we always recommend, self-guided tour around the ruins before returning to Cusco. That's the 2-day Baby Inca Trail. So, is it rail or trail to Machu Picchu for you? If you consider the trail, you need to have a moderate level of fitness and accept that you'll be walking anywhere from 4 hours to 7 hours a day at altitude. You will camp, be it on a thermarest or cot beds, and you won't shower for 3 nights. You'll be well fed, extremely well guided, and gain a much better insight and understanding of the Inca Empire as you stop at the many ruins on the way along the Inca Trail. And that's something I actually did forget to mention. The trail itself is dotted with many Incan ruins, and you and your group and your guide will stop and have conversations, discussions about the ruins themselves and the Incan Empire history and culture. So it's not just a straight walk, and there are plenty of opportunities to stop and relax. The more sedate or civilized way is choosing rail, where your memories and experiences are no less than if you trekked the trail. If you want a challenge to walk the rural pathways the Incas once did, see the many hidden ruins en route, spectacular scenery, to have an experience that will guaranteed last a lifetime, then trail it is or should be. For myself and my family, it just had to be the trail. Hey, I made the promise to myself and I had to keep that promise, so we chose the trail. How could we not? I had spoken so often about my trek experiences with my kids, and I had so much wanted to be with them when they did it. I also had to show them that the old man still had it after all the talking. Now, did the old man still have it? That proved to be a close call. My knees are not what they used to be. On the flip side, my little 7-year-old at the time, the asthmatic, was literally running up the hills and coming back constantly asking why Mum and Dad were walking so slowly. The porters called him a mountain goat, and let me tell you, he was. His older brothers were ahead taking pictures, relaxing, or petting the ubiquitous llamas while they patiently waited for their parents. I was quietly pleading with the hills not to embarrass me in front of my kids. Now, I won't speak for my wife, but my memories played tricks on me as I had forgotten some of the harder parts of the trail that my 20-year-old brain and body had easily conquered at the time. It was the downhill that hurt the 50-year-old body, and surprisingly, not the dreaded trek to Dead Woman's Pass. I've always been lucky with not suffering from altitude sickness, so that didn't come into play. But I think this time, having my boys around me, literally buzzing by me 1 minute, the next off in the distance, put any mental or physical interruptions aside, and I powered on up Dead Woman's Pass. In fact, reaching the highest point in the trail that day on this 18th Inca Trail actually came to represent one, if not the highest point in all my travel experiences. And that's a big statement, as I've been blessed to travel extensively. Thing 2 and Thing 3 hit Dead Woman's Pass, and they kindly waited for Mum and Dad to reach its summit, this mental and physical goal of the trail. My oldest boy, Thing 1, was actually behind me as I reached the 4,200 metre point of Devilman's Pass. When my wife and I arrived, Thing 2 and Thing 3 then scurried off down into the valley, not to be seen until that evening at the campsite. So my wife and I were waiting there for my oldest when he reached the top. When he arrived, and without prompting or urging from me, we just seemed to fall into each other's arms and had a little hug and a cry as we shared and understood the meaning of it all. And I'm actually tearing up a little bit now. Thankfully, my wife caught the moment in a picture which proudly hangs in our home, and you can see it right here. Now, I can't speak for him for what he was feeling at that moment, but I know what I was feeling. It was true gratitude for the many opportunities that life has given me, the challenges I have taken and overcome, and the love and respect my son showed for me, and the love of and from my family. But I think deep down, it was the fact that I was able to fulfill that promise made so many years ago to an idea, to a theory that a young man with only the idea of a family had in his head. That I was able to see that promise fulfilled literally at and on the spot that I made that promise all those years ago. So whether you ride by rail or trail to Machu Picchu, I hope this overview of Machu Picchu and how to get there has inspired, motivated, and educated you to some degree. For more information on Peru and Machu Picchu, please reach out to one of our excellent Latin destination specialists here at Goway. Promises made, promises kept. Write your own travel tale as I did. As always, thank you very much for your time today and have a good one.